Good afternoon, folks. Welcome to Esoterica Livestream. I know that I typically do these on Fridays, but I am not going to be able to do this tomorrow because I'm going to be on the road. So, I thought we'd hang out today, Thursday, and, hang out, take some questions, talk about some recent content creation on the channel, sort of what's coming up and things like that. So as you'll notice, all the bookshelves are gone behind me. We're in the midst of this office remodel. I still have a couple of bookshelves here and there. You can see sort of over this corner, over that corner. That is the complete works of Paracelsus. I've been working on a project with that. So that's a complete works of Paracelsus from the early 17th century. And so I'm working on that. Over there on that shelf over there is some stuff I've been working on with Peter Abano, and that's sorry, my head's not quite here yet. The Pico della Mirandola that I made a short of. I'm experimenting with a couple of shorts, basically antique booktube stuff. So if you're interested in antique books, especially esoteric related books, I'll be doing some shorts on those kinds of books. But it's been a cool couple of weeks here on the channel. We've gotten a lot of cool stuff done. Really have appreciated some of the content. Has been a lot of fun to create. Finally got around to making the first in a series on Solomon, which I've been wanting to do for a long time. I mean, Solomon obviously looms large around here in terms of, Solomonic magic and the history of Solomon and all that sort of thing. And so finally got around to just doing a first episode in what's going to be a series on how Solomon really became sort of the esoteric king. And we really got into that, and it was really fun to do that first episode and try to trace out that earliest material, getting into some of the Dead Sea Scrolls and stuff like that. So that was a lot of fun. So looking forward to wrapping that one up. I think we'll get over to Solomon. I think the next episode will probably be sometime in the next few months, and then we'll do one on sort of Solomon the magician. We got through sort of Solomon the exorcist and Solomon the astrologer, but now we need to turn to Solomon the magician, and we'll really get up to that at some point soon. But I have already lots of content on Solomon. If you're interested in Solomonic magic, there's tons of episodes on the channel. The Hydromantea and the Lesser Key and all kinds of stuff. So there's lots and lots and lots on Solomon. So that was a fun episode to do. Also worked on the episode on Peter Abano, which Peter Abano is one of these characters from the Middle Ages that is just now getting the attention that he deserves. Although his works are still not translated, there's still no major translation. I don't think of any of his major works. There might be a translation of the Lucidator into Italian, but there is no translation of the Conciliator. Although I will say that the Differentia 156, the famous Differentia on magic, on incantations, has been translated. There is a translation of it available. So we'll get fun to work into an episode on Peter Abano. I have a short coming up on Friday, tomorrow, about his book. There's an antique copy there over my shoulder. That is a copy of the Conciliator in his book on poisons from 1548. It's a really fantastic volume. Has some really cool marginalia from different doctors over the course of several years. And so it's really neat to sort of see these marginal notations, specifically on the text on poisons. So got cool to work on an episode on Peter Abano and sort of his actual role in the history of magic, whereas we have lots and lots to say about the Heptameron, and I've done a whole episode on the Heptameron and the elucidation of necromancy, which are really the same book. One is the genetic ancestor to the other. The elucidation of necromancy became the Heptameron once it got printed in the collected works of Cornelius Agrippa. So that was got really able to get into that, and it was a lot of fun to work on that one with Abano. And last week we covered this great, relatively short little Gnostic book Gnostic tract. And that is to say, the wisdom or the Sophia of Jesus Christ, which is a fantastic little text that deals with all kinds of neat stuff. So hold on one second. Yeah, I guess so. It was great to get into the Sophia of Jesus Christ, which is a fantastic text, and of course the text that it was based on, Ugnostos, which is really really interesting as well. So it was cool to get into that text and sort of show how, in some ways, early Christian Gnostics adapted um, Gnostic teachings, which seem to have pre-existed Christianity, or at least existed alongside Christianity, and how those were accommodated to Christianity. And some people really took it as that text is a forgery, but I would say that in the ancient world, they wouldn't have thought of it as a forgery in the same way that we think of them now. So that's not quite the right category that would fit into that. But it was, but it's a neat text, and again, I think what's really fascinating, at least to me, about Ugnostos, is that it's a glimpse into an apparently non-Christian form of so-called Gnosticism, and I think that that's a really fascinating thing. We don't typically get distinctively non-Christian forms of Gnosticism so often, although some of the Sethian texts are like those, and so those are kind of neat to be able to get some of those. So, at any rate, the mystery of how Christianity became Gnostic is really interesting, and I think the relationship of Ugnostos to the Sophia of Jesus Christ is a really important way to see how those things developed. And of course, the other big news is that, let me see if I can grab one from here behind me, breaking it. The other big news, of course, is that we finally got the incantation bowls out to the public, and yeah, these are really cool. I worked with a ceramicist to get these made. The first batch that we had literally went sold out exclusively to patrons, Patreon members. I thought that it was a thing where, we would sell a few to Patreon members, and then all of them sold. Patreon folks bought all of them. So I talked to the ceramicist, and I said, look, let's make a whole nother batch to make them available to the public. And yeah, here they are. Here's one of the ones that we have left. I will say this: if you're contemplating getting one, you should do it now, because there are literally 4 left for sale. They are just about to sell out, and I say sell out, I mean sell out in less than 24 hours. So so if you want one, I would get one now. I would just stop what you're doing and drop the live stream and go grab one. So yeah, there's only 4 left, and I suspect they're going to sell out probably within the hour or so. So yeah, so that's been the stuff we've been working on the channel. The major stuff we've been working on the channel is this episode of Solomon. On the next cycle coming up, I'm going to be doing a really interesting analysis of some exorcism manuals. As folks may know, and I think I've done an episode about this as well, that that exorcistic literature and necromantic literature are basically the same, 2 sides of the same coin. And if you look at medieval necromancy manuals, they're basically exorcistic literature, but operative to control demons and not just sort of cast them out of people. But what I will be doing is I'm going to be taking a look at a couple of different exorcism manuals, specifically Guillermo Mingi's 2 major manuals, and then some other ones, and show how these exorcism manuals and magical manuals are actually very similar. They're a bit of a mirror of one another, and in fact, many of them would get on the Index Prohibitorum. The most famous one that get on the index is Stoiber's armaments of the church, which includes amulets, straight up amulets. And these ended up getting banned by the church, especially after the Rituale Romanum was codified in 1614. And in some sense, there was a standardization of the exorcism ritual. So, so yeah, I'll be looking at that next week. I'm also going to be working on this episode on Jesus, because I constantly get the question, what do I think about Jesus, and who do I think Jesus was, and what is the esoteric understanding of Jesus, at least from my point of view. And so I'm going to be doing an episode on Jesus, basically sort of laying out who I think Jesus was, historically at least, and I'll be laying that out. I think that may not be the most, I think maybe a pretty controversial episode, because I think I have a somewhat unusual analysis of the historical Jesus. I think I have an analysis that I don't see a lot of people having. But at any rate, what I'll do is I'm going to be analyzing who I think Jesus was, primarily by looking at our earliest records of Jesus, which of course are the epistles of Paul, the Gospel of Mark, and Q. So I'll be looking at that. Be looking at specifically Q and stuff like that. So, so that's kind of what's on the agenda. But at any rate, I want to jump on here and grab some questions. I have about an hour and a half before I have to head out for the day. So grab some questions while I'm here. Joseph Peterson, folks, I'm sure know Joseph Peterson's done tremendous work in the world of occult publishing. It's a tremendous honor to have you on the live stream, Mr. Peterson. Well, including the material from Trithemius' Antipolis Exorcism chapters. I didn't think about including it. I really want to focus in primarily on Guillermo Mingi's Fustis Daemonum and his Flagellum Daemonum, and then on like I said, on Stoiber. But maybe there's two medieval exorcisms. Mostly what I'm focusing on is 17th century exorcistic literature, but the two exorcistic texts I'd love to come back to, and I will, or one, the ones you mentioned in Trithemius, but also Hildegard of Bingen has an exorcism ritual that she lays out in one of her letters. And what's interesting about that is that it's one of the only ones we get from a woman. And so, considering that exorcism disproportionately affected women, we actually have a rare exorcistic ritual preserved for us in the letters of Hildegard of Bingen. So maybe that will be a double feature, looking at Trithemius and that. So, but that's definitely a future episode. Much, definitely will do that. So, but thank you, Joseph. Thank you. Appreciate all the work that you have done, and I hope you like your incantation bowl. I'm glad that you picked one up. I hope you like it. All right, let me grab some other questions, folks. So feel free to put them, throw some questions up. Obviously prioritize super chats and stuff like that, but try to get to everybody as well. I don't want to skip someone just because you can't do a super chat, but I'll try to get to as many as I can in the next hour or so. Would I ever do a video on LDS esoteric beliefs? Yes, I am going to do one. In fact, I have the big magic and Mormonism study, and it's actually sitting out there on my to read list. I need to get time to read it and time to do some other LDS stuff. I'd also like to work with Dan McClellan on it. I think Dan is a member of the LDS Church, and it would be cool to work with him on sort of this intersection of LDS theology, LDS history, and esotericism. So absolutely, I definitely want to do an episode on LDS material. Going to be going actually to Salt Lake, I think in 2026, 2027, when the big temple, the main temple, when it reopens before consecration, so I can go in, because I obviously can't go in once it's consecrated. So I'll be visiting Salt Lake City at some point to visit the big temple. So I have an interest in LDS stuff, and anytime I get to pass, we were randomly, my wife and I were traveling through upstate New York on our way to Vermont, and of course I had to make the detour to go to through the Burnover district in general, but then to go to where Joseph Smith was born, and it was neat. We had basically a private tour. One of the elders there was really kind and showed us around, and it was great. It was great to do that stuff. But absolutely going to be getting to some LDS stuff at some point in the future. I just don't know when. Am I familiar with the Voynich manuscript? Yes, I am familiar with the Voynich manuscript. I've done a whole episode on basically what I think the solution to the Voynich manuscript is, and the solution to the Voynich manuscript, as far as I'm concerned, is that it is gibberish. I think from a mathematical point of view and linguistics, and to a greater degree, cryptography or mathematical questions. They're not. They're just mathematical questions, and I think that the manuscript is gibberish from a mathematical point of view. And I have worked on it. I've worked on it for many years. I worked on the European Voynich transliteration project, basically converting it to machine code or machine readable text, standardized text. And once that was all done, and once the data came out, I think that it's pretty clear that it's gibberish. It's not. It's not that it's not decipherable or not deciphered. It's not decipherable because there's no underlying language, natural or exotic. It's not Turkish. It's not. It's none of that. I think that statistically, the data is quite conclusive that it is gibberish and that it will never be deciphered because it is nearing stochastic in its distribution. So that's what I think about it. But if you want to check out my episode on the Voynich manuscript, I explain in depth, why I believe that the Voynich manuscript does not contain an underlying language, whether natural or otherwise. Do I read everything in the original language? I read very much in the original language, some much stronger than others. So, my Latin and Hebrew and stuff are pretty good. My Aramaic's pretty good. Greek is not so great. I'm not super great on Greek. My Coptic is actually, it's pretty okay. So I can read. If I'm reading a text, I can almost always consult both the manuscript for instance, in the Nag Hammadi library, I can consult the facsimile manuscripts and the original, sort of the modern edition if I need to. But would I describe myself as a fluent in Coptic? No, definitely not. But at any rate, I know that Religion for Breakfast is offering a Coptic class coming up soon. So that would be cool to do if you want to learn Coptic. But anything that I can read, I do read in the original language. And that's part of the reason why I don't do any Eastern esotericism. I don't do anything in India or China because I don't read Sanskrit or Pali. I don't read Middle Chinese. And so there's no way I would tackle a text like the Tao Te Ching or a lot of Taoist alchemical text written in Middle Chinese because I don't have Middle Chinese, and I wouldn't pretend to be an expert in that material because I don't have that kind of background. But the best translation of the Nag Hammadi library is, I think, the Meyer translation is going to be your go-to translation for any civilian. The Meyer translation is published, I think, as the Nag Hammadi scriptures, and so that's going to be the one you're going to want to pick up. Great introductions for those texts. This is a great question. This is after watching the last episode, I found myself wondering about other texts that deal with sort of liminal periods of ascended beings like Jesus between resurrection and ascension. This is a great question, and I haven't thought about this. If there are other cases, I mean, of course, in the East there are like bodhisattvas, right, who are sort of ascended and not yet ascended. So I know that those exist, but again, I'm not, Avalokiteshvara and those kinds of characters. But in the West, it's a good question about sort of characters that are in between states. I mean, I think of Enoch, who sort of ascended and turned into an angel. So he's not quite human and not quite an angel. So he's an interesting version of this. There are some rabbinical characters that are sort of like that are sort of, the heroes are not quite gods and not quite people in the Greek mythology. So yeah, it'd be cool to look at characters who are kind of in between that aren't quite, they're human plus or they're God minus. I think this is a great question. It'd be cool to look through some of these characters and see which ones are at least, like you said, a liminal kind of character. That's fascinating. You also get sort of Elisha ben Abuya, who's like seen behind the pargod, the veil, and he kind of knows what's coming in the future and stuff like that. So that would be neat. But yeah, that's a great question. Could you investigate incidental talismanic objects used in notorious events that take on arcane power by circumstance? It's interesting. Can talismans be made on accident? Do they have to be made with the intention of the talismanic maker? It seems like if they could be made on accident, it would require a lot of coincidences for them to happen. But at least in the modern context, I mean, I don't know if there were in this like in the Amityville horror, there are all these Amityville spin-offs where like the dollhouse inside of the Amityville horror house becomes possessed or something like that. I don't know. Um, no, I think that's more of like a paranormal investigator kind of thing. I don't think I would, I don't think I would be an expert in that kind of stuff or have any expertise in regards to that. Whatever the Warrens and their museum with the Raggedy Ann doll and all that. I don't think that I would have enough expertise to speak on it. But of course, if there were, an incident that involved some connection to historical occultism, then certainly I could weigh in about, if someone's using an amulet that uses, sigils of Saturn or something like that, I could weigh in on it. But I think that's also the kind of thing that a Google search could give you, or just consulting Agrippa. But no, I don't think that I would have much to say about modern contemporary examples of that kind of thing. Kind of music do I listen to? I mean, you can kind of see from my shirt. It's a Weakling shirt, so I listen to a lot of black metal. And I've been listening recently to the new Deaf Heaven album, which I really, really like. The new Deaf Heaven album. It's really fantastic. So yeah, when listening to that album a lot, I like the new Cure record a lot. I think that's a fantastic record. The new record by the Cure. What else have I been listening to recently? Wolves in the Throne Room re-released their 2005 demo, which was really fantastic. It's slightly different than what ultimately came out. It's good stuff. But my children say that Abba listens to screaming music, and they're not wrong. They're not wrong. What is my opinion of Jung's views on Gnosticism? Jung's views on Gnosticism are really interesting, intellectually interesting. I think that they're fascinating in terms of a glimpse into Jung's own psychology and his own genius. He, of course, was a genius, a great genius, and both intellectually and also, I think, a great spiritual genius. But I will say that they have very little to do with historical Gnosticism. So, and this is true of Jung when he talks about alchemy. Jung has an ingenious understanding of alchemy that is idiosyncratic to his psychoanalytic beliefs, but that has basically no connection to historical alchemy. So if you want historical alchemy, don't go to Jung. And if you want neat psychologizing stuff, go to Jung, but don't cross the streams. And unfortunately, a lot of people cross the streams. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I look casual, and the reason why is because I was downstairs. Our house is an old house that doesn't have a lot of air conditioning, and so I was downstairs packing incantation bowls, which is a thing I never thought I would say. And I was packing incantation bowls and just t-shirt weather, folks. T-shirt weather. It's an interesting question about Merkava mysticism and traditional astrological traditions. I don't, to my knowledge, and I'm doing a lot of preparation right now on Merkava literature, I don't think there's any connection to traditional astrology or Hellenistic astrology and the Merkava literature. However, in Hechelot Rabbati, one of the more neat things that happens in that text, and there's a bunch going on in that, is when the rabbis do finally get to the vision of God in the seventh heaven, they describe the divine robe. God is wearing a kind of divine robe, and that robe actually emanates the planets. It emanates the stars and planets. And so that's a neat connection to astrology, astronomy, I suppose, where the robe, basically the cosmos is kind of the robe that God wears. So that's a neat connection to sort of astrology, I suppose. But there's nothing in there that's about astrology or astronomy any more than that, to my knowledge. But the business of God's robe and Hechelet Rabbati is pretty fascinating in that way. Right. It's a question that I usually get on live streams. Does magic actually work? Does Solomonic magic actually work? I don't know. I've never done it, so I can't tell you that it works. I do know that there are lots of practitioners out there who do it and do say that it works. I have to say that I don't understand how it could work, given our understanding of physics and stuff like that. So that's a issue of my ignorance more than it is an issue of them being wrong. But there's lots of people in the practitioner community that swear by Solomonic magic, and so I think that it's not for me to say that it doesn't work because I can't certainly prove a negative. But it also says that I don't know because I don't have any. I don't have any evidence that I find compelling. So for me, the jury's out. I'm pretty skeptical, but as I said, there are lots of people in the community, kind of the practitioner community, who swear by Solomonic magic, and therefore I think that those kinds of claims should be taken seriously. Will I ever do a deeper dive on the Pistis Sophia? Probably not. I think I've said my piece about the Pistis Sophia. I think that I may come back to to some of the other literature that's connected to Pistis Sophia, specifically I think it's called the Untitled Treatise in the Bruce Codex. They didn't try with that one, did they? It's the Untitled Treatise. So I'll probably come back and do an episode on that, and that'll probably mostly wrap the Pistis Sophia, Books of You kind of circuit. So I think I've done just about all I'm going to do on it. But I mean, that text, it's huge. It's in the Book of You are just massive texts, and well worth further investigation. I'm just not sure that it's on the horizon for me at this point. Have I read Wouter's new book, Professor Hanegraaff? No, I've not read it yet. It is on the pile. It's basically an updated version of the Guide of the Perplexed Western Esotericism. So I'm glad that it's out. I really do want to read it, but I have not had the chance to read it yet. Hopefully, I can reach out to Professor Hanegraaff, have him on the show. Again, he's my teacher, and I have enormous respect for him and his work, and so I'm looking forward to getting to it. But I have not read it yet. Let's see. Let me scroll down here and grab some questions. Yeah, sometimes I say that the Voynich manuscript it contains nonsense, and people really get upset about that. It's weird what people have emotional connections to. Yeah, didn't Paul never meet Jesus? He only met him in a vision. So yeah, he never met him, but he certainly met people that met him. And so, for instance, Paul seems to know about Jesus's teachings on divorce, and Jesus's teachings on divorce are extremely idiosyncratic to Jesus. No other rabbi was that conservative when it came to questions of divorce. And so we can tell that at least in that that Paul does seem to know things about the teachings of Jesus, at least indirectly. Again, from a historical point of view. Now, mystically, that's a whole different question. But I do think that there is a little to glean from the historical Jesus from what Paul says, but it may be just the fact that Jesus was executed and the question of divorce. But there's not much else that Paul seems to know about the historical connections. Wonderful, Joe. I'm glad you love the bowl, man. I will say that almost everyone else got random bowls, but when I saw you put your order in, I went to find the one that I thought was like, what's the best one from history? And again, you folks will have to forgive my being a little picky. Other folks got a random one, but Joseph Peterson was not getting a random one. So I'm glad you like it, brother. A connection of Merkabah mysticism and Paul. The best text for there are going to be James Tabor's books, and also Terry Jones's books and articles. There's a 2-part article. If you look at my episode on Paul and Merkabah mysticism, I have links to all that literature. So check that out. It's pretty interesting stuff. So yeah, check that out. Michael Haas, you enjoyed the video on Austin Osman Spare. Is there any evidence for pragmatic-based theurgy or magic theory similar to much more recent developments such as chaos magic in the 80s? I have no idea. This is a great question for Angela Puka, who's much more conversant about more contemporary matters. So I just don't know anything about sort of chaos magic and that world. In fact, just doing the episode on Austin Osman Spare was a real reach for me because it's not in my expertise at all. And I just wanted to do one because I find his sigil magic stuff really fascinating. But I can't answer that one. Sorry. Right. Do I believe the Piece de Sophia book was a forgery? No, definitely not. Do I practice the occult? No. Nope. Yeah, Jasper Owens, thank you so much for the super sticker. I really appreciate the support and the thanks. It's very kind of you, brother. Thank you very much. Will it ever cover hesychasm? Probably not. And probably the reason why I won't probably cover hesychasm is one, other folks have covered it. I think Philip has covered it, and I think Andrew have covered it on their respective channels. And also, I don't know much about Eastern Orthodoxy. I'm more of a Latinist. I'm intellectually more rooted in the Latin West. And so what goes on in the Greek East is fascinating, but I don't have a lot of intellectual connection to it. So it's just not material that I know a ton about. And so it would not be good for me to cover it because I'm not an expert in it. But no, I probably won't cover hesychasm because I think it's been covered and because it's outside of my realm of expertise. What do you hope Earl Fontenelle will invite you to talk about on the Schwepp podcast? If folks are fans of Esoterica and you don't know about Schwepp, the Secret History of Western Esotericism, hosted by Earl Fontenelle, who's absolutely fantastic. If you like Esoterica, you absolutely have to check out Schwepp. I don't know. I mean, I could, having taught a 14-part seminar on Agrippa, I feel like I know Agrippa pretty well, so we could definitely chat about Agrippa. But I think it's going to be like 15 years before he gets to Agrippa. Know some John Dee stuff. I think there's a few things that I could weigh in on with some degree of expertise. But yeah, it'd be great to be on. It'd be great to be on Earl's channel. It's a fantastic podcast. If you're interested in this kind of thing. Hey, Vishanti, it's good to see you. Well, I wouldn't say that the Voynich is fake. I do think it's historical. I think it was produced in the 15th century, so it's a real medieval manuscript, but it's not. It's not a manuscript that contains any information, or I mean information in the information theory sense. Of course, it contains information. There's all kinds of neat things in there, like you can see that it has castles that have castellation on them. But yeah, I don't think there's any. What I mean is that it's not that it's a forgery or a fake. It's like definitely a 15th century manuscript. It's just that it doesn't contain any information. I should be clear about that. But good to see you. Good to see you, Vishanti. Any thoughts on traditions about the Son of Man? Not only were it to Jesus, but in Enochic traditions and such. Yeah, this is a great question about doing an episode on this concept of the Ben Adam, or the Ben Anash. This is a term that comes up in the book of Daniel, and it eventually acquires messianic overtones like the Ben David, the son of David. So yeah, this would be a neat one to cover in terms of how this term that basically just means human being is eventually transmuted into a messianic category. So yeah, it'd be cool to cover that. It's a great idea. But yeah, Enoch and all kinds of things. So absolutely. Thoughts on the Phaistos disc? I don't think anyone has any idea what it says, right? I think that it's still untranslated. It has something to do with linear A. I think some of the symbols from linear A, and it may be like hieroglyphic Luwian, that there's some connection there. But my guess is that it's probably some kind of religious inscription. I do think it contains information. I do think that when we crack linear A and maybe have a better understanding of hieroglyphic Louis and stuff, we might be able to get inside of it. But I think that until we get a bilingual, we're not going to be able to read any of that stuff. So, but a great question. I actually have a reproduction of the Phaistos disc that I bought on Manoa on the Isle of Crete. Where is it? It's packed up somewhere, but I have one. I have a little replica of it. If you want to learn to read Aramaic, you should learn to read Hebrew first. I would always tell people take 3 semesters of college level Hebrew, and then basically take up Aramaic, because most Aramaic is taught as if you already understand Hebrew. And I have resources on my study guide. If you take a look at the study guide for the channel, you can find it. And I have resources for teaching yourself or learning to read Aramaic. But most people, I think, learn Aramaic sort of vis-a-vis Hebrew. So that would be my recommendation, is that if you don't have Hebrew, get Hebrew, and then pick up your Aramaic. Howard Ramberg, are you familiar with the law of true names in folklore as well as Egyptian themes? And what is your take on pataphysics? Pataphysics was like the joke, like the surrealist physics invented by Alfred Jarry, right? If I remember correctly. I don't know much about it. Like, I'm literally asking if I'm right about it from Alfred Jarry, but I don't know anything about it. I don't know this law of true names. I don't know what that is. Maybe you can say a little bit more in the comments and it might let me know. So I'm sorry I don't have better answers for your questions, but yeah, I don't know that law of true names. And all I know about the pataphysics, I think, is it's invented like sort of surrealist metaphysics by Alfred Jarry. But this is the extent of my knowledge. You can find the incantation bowls over at Esoterica Rare Books. So just look at Esoterica Rare Books, and you can take a look at it there. Why don't I cover Eastern esotericism? Because I don't know anything about it. As simple as that. My background's in Western esotericism, so I stick to what I know. I think that people who pretend to know everything typically know very little. And Dunning-Kruger effect, you typically think you know a lot more than what you really know, especially when things you don't know a lot about. And so I don't know anything really about Eastern, again, even Greek orthodoxy is like pretty far afield from what I work on. So mostly my stuff is ancient Near East and then Western. Did I ever have any tangible happenings in my conjurings? I've never done any conjurings. So, no, I have not. Is Enoch the same as Metatron? In third Enoch, he is. In third Enoch, Enoch is turned into Metatron. So there definitely was an ancient apocalyptic tradition in which the Enoch becomes Metatron. So at least in third Enoch. So yes, but again, are they the same? I mean, I think it depends on, if you ask whoever wrote third Enoch, they would tell you, but no. We're going to do a deep dive on Abraxas. Yeah, I will do one. I do plan on doing that. It's maybe the kind of thing that I want to team up with Dr. Kirsten Switzer and work on that. Yeah, but I definitely should do one on Abraxas. There's several gods in the PGM that are worth doing. And yeah, also, for folks who are interested in this kind of PGM related material, Dr. Kirsten Switzer, her website, which throw it in the chat. I'm not going to be able to find it really quickly. Yeah, her website is one of the best, if not the best, resources for the study of ancient magic online. I would say that it is the best resource online. But check out her work if you're interested in all things PGM, Abraxas. I support her on Patreon because I think she does amazing work. And so, if you trust my judgment, and I'm willing to, put my money where my mouth is and support someone. So I think that would be, you know, a pretty decent endorsement. So this is a great question. Do I plan to do any content on ancient magical practices in Mesoamerica? So I've already done one on bloodletting mysticism among the Maya. So that's a topic that I'm just really interested in. And so I've done one on bloodletting mysticism among the Maya. For the Aztec folks and other, I had to do a lot more work. So I just happen to have a huge interest in Mayan stuff. So I've covered that on the channel. But maybe I'll come back and do that. But I'll have to get really beef up my expertise there. One of the things I'm really interested in is among the Incan culture around the idea of mummified rulers and them having sort of ecstatic prophets that spoke for these dead rulers. So these like rulers were still alive in some sense and spoke through these prophets. And of course that played very much into the whole business with Pizarro and the civil war between the two brothers. So that would be a cool thing to take a look at, as sort of the role of ancestor shamanism in specifically the Incan context and that material in the context of Pizarro and stuff. So that would be a cool topic to cover. All right, I'm looking through here. So thank you, Ike. So if Pico's dignity depends on metaphysical ascent, how can one preserve that without reintroducing the transcendent hierarchy even implicitly? It's a good question. Just to make sure folks are hearing me, I heard my mic change slightly, so I'm not sure if I'm coming through. This is a good question. If Pico's dignity depends on metaphysical ascent, how can I think the idea is that you have a great chain of being, right? This is where Platonism is very different than other forms of mysticism, where unlike other forms of mysticism where you have to jump a gap for so sort of the Renaissance Hermeticism that got introduced is that you don't have to jump that gap because it's just a chain of being all the way up. And so I think that you don't have a complete transcendence because you have the system of procession and recession vis-a-vis old school Platonism. And because you have that, procession, recession, you can climb all the way to the top of the food chain, so to speak. So, yeah, to my knowledge, I don't think it reintroduces the problem. I think that that's their solution for it. Now, of course, that causes all kinds of other problems. But I think that it does solve, at least for that one. Scroll down real fast to make sure I'm still coming through, because I definitely heard my mic do something weird. Wow, there's a lot of super chats. Okay, good. It is coming through. Okay, good. All right, let me grab these super chats just to make sure that I don't skip anybody, especially folks who are paying for stuff. That's a great question about Pico. It's a great question from Nell. Hey, Nell. What ritual that is practiced today do you think has the oldest origins? Probably burial. I imagine burial is probably one of the, we all have to deal with death or certain kind of funerary rituals. Those have to be pretty ancient. But in terms of continuously practiced rituals, my guess is that probably the some Vedic rituals have to go back really, really far. Might be my guess in terms of continuously practiced stuff. Yeah, I would say my guess would probably be Vedic rituals, but again, not being an expert in that material, I'm not quite sure, but that would be my guess. But yeah, that'd be my guess. Was I wearing a Panopticon shirt? Yes, probably. I have a couple different Panopticon shirts. I have a Kentucky shirt and a couple other ones. So yeah, there's a good chance that I was wearing a Panopticon shirt. Love Panopticon. All right. Any videos that I consider I'm going to be remaking? Yeah, I'm definitely going to be remaking a couple of older ones that I just don't like. I want to remake the one on the Greek magical papyri. There's a couple other ones that I want to redo, but yeah, there's a couple, and I've been remaking a few a little bit at a time. So yeah, I'll be doing those. Would you ever do a video about Reconstructionist Judaism? Probably not. It doesn't. I don't really like. Very rarely do I want to ever do videos about myself or my own beliefs. I'm just not that interested in that. And I don't think anyone else should be. I don't like this channel to be about me. But no, I don't think I would ever do a video on Reconstructionism. I think it's. I mean, and even the Reconstructionist movement as it exists now is not totally my jam. I'm much more sort of an Orthodox Kaplanian in the sense that I follow Kaplan and not Reconstructionism, the movement. Although I'm a member of the movement, but I much prefer Kaplan and his thinking. So, but I don't think I'd ever do a video about it. It's just not not appropriate for the channel. But if the Reconstructionist movement wanted to work with me on something and do some content there, I'd certainly like to. I've actually taught a whole class on Reconstructionism. So. Am I familiar with the Book of Kells? Yes, of course. So probably, at least in the Western world, it's probably the most beautiful book ever produced. Lindisfarne Gospels. So yeah, I'm definitely familiar with the Book of Kells. Fantastically beautiful book. Yeah, in fact, I was talking about while we were in Egypt, because some of the art that we think of as typically Celtic actually has its origins in Egyptian monasticism, and so the knotwork that we think about. Especially the carpet pages, some of that knotwork is not only indigenously Irish, of course it is, but some of it is also influenced by Coptic monasticism. And you can see very similar knotwork in Coptic manuscripts as you can see in things like the Lindisfarne Gospels and in the Book of Kells. I've seen the Book of Kells in person, actually. It's quite a thing to behold. Quite a thing to behold. All right. Lori Denning, thank you. Would you ever riff on that robes discussion, talk about holy vestments, garments, and its role in ancient esotericism? Yeah, maybe that's a cool topic. It'd be cool to talk about specifically the high priest's garments, the Urim and Thummim. Be cool in the ephod. Be cool to talk about those specific garments and sort of their history and esotericism. I mean, the Urim and Thummim are basically the only legitimate forms of divination allowed by the Bible. So it'd be cool to cover those. I've done an episode on the Sefer Malbush, which is a text of Kabbalistic magic that talks about the construction of a special magical garment. So I have already done an episode on the Sefer Malbush, of which part of the Sefer Malbush is found in the Sefer Raziel. So I have done those, but I would, I would. I think it's a cool topic to talk about esoteric clothing. It'd be cool to team up with someone like Bernadette Banner and do something about sort of, especially medieval or Renaissance clothing and esotericism. Like why we think of a wizard the way we think of them. Why are they dressed the way we think of them being dressed? Why do they wear that hat, the wizard hat? What did actual necromancers look like? Looking at we do have historical depictions of people doing necromancy in the Middle Ages. It'd be neat to recreate a necromancer's outfit with someone like Bernadette Banner, who's just amazing. I love her. But that'd be a cool thing to do. But yeah, that's a great question. Esoteric vestments and garments. Fantastic. Any reading recs about the belief in rituals pertaining to ghosts and other spirits of the departed within Western esotericism? I think that the major book I would say, at least in the history of Western esotericism, is going to be Ludwig Lavater's book on spirits. I've done an episode about it. It's basically the most authoritative early modern book on spirits. In fact, I think it really introduces the haunted house, as we all know and love it, into literature or into beliefs. Of course, haunted houses existed prior to that. The famous case of the haunted house in, I think, in Pliny. In Athens, but really the haunted houses we've inherited, it really comes through Ludwig Lavater. But the idea of ghosts, interacting with ghosts, I think is a really modern idea. that you could, summon them or interact with them much. They're more sort of part of the furniture, so to speak. But if you want to get into a deep dive into that, I would check out Ludwig Lavater's book on spirits. That's the sort of locus classicus for um, for talking about ghosts. I love haunted house stories. I really, like many people, I made my way through House of Leaves. I'm reading The Haunted. It's about the Smurl haunting. I've always loved the genre of haunted houses. I just love that. I love that genre. I love the idea of haunted houses. I've been in lots of houses that are alleged to be haunted. Even one time driving through Long Island, I uh, forced my poor wife to drive past the house in Amityville, which all due apologies for the people that actually live there. I know that's a real hassle, but I did not try to gawk. Just try to drive by and take a gander. But I have a deep affection for haunted house stuff. Like I said, I'm reading the book about the Smurl haunting in anticipation of the new Conjuring movie coming out. And yeah, it's the kind of thing that I don't know. I don't believe in ghosts, but I want there to be ghosts. It's one of, in fact, there's a whole short story that I want to write about, or even a novel about ghosts. Um, but it'd be fun to like hang out with paranormal investigators and like go and do ghost stuff. I think it would be fun, And again, I don't let my you should never let your lack of belief get in the way of a good time. So if I could, hang out with cool people in old buildings and hear spooky stuff, that'd be a blast. So if any paranormal investigators want to have an expert in esotericism and the occult be their resident skeptic or whatever, feel free to hit me up. I would love to skulk around haunted places with people and, I don't know, feel it get really cold because a ghost walked up. All right, let me grab some more super chats and before I forget about them. Have you ever crossed anything that could be a precedent of the 5 trees in paradise found in Gosthom and the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of Judas? Closest I found is 5 seals of baptism in Clement's The Gospel of Egyptians, and the 5 plus the 2 luminaries versus the 7 planet cosmologies. I don't think so. I think that the 5 trees in paradise thing is also a Manichaean thing. So I think, if I'm remembering correctly, it's also a Manichaean thing. But I think that it has to do with the planets, the planets that are not the sun and the moon, obviously. But I don't know of any specific precedents for it. But I just think that there's also some Manichaean stuff about it specifically. But I really do appreciate the super chat. I'll think more about it, and if something comes to me, I'll let you know. I know you're over on Patreon. I'll let you know if something else comes to me, but I don't know specifically any other. I don't know of any other specific thing, but I'll let you know if something comes to me. But I very much appreciate the support. This is also, I think, the 5 baptisms, also in the Sethian literature. There are the 5 baptisms, and I think that those, there's several baptisms of water and fire, and I think also those are connected to the 5 trees in paradise too. But I'm not sure. I have to think about that more. Any plans to cover the Shams of Ma'arif? No, probably not. I wouldn't cover it because it's not been translated in its entirety. I don't read Arabic really well, so I couldn't read it in the original language. And it's not been translated. Only a very small part of it's been translated, 5th or something. And Philip over at Let's Talk Religion's already done a great episode on it, so I don't feel any need to redo what he's already done. I think he's done great. He's much more of an expert in Islam and Sufism than I will be ever, and so I trust his work. And so there's basically no reason for me to redouble that effort, be reinventing the wheel. Mandarin, I really appreciate your super sticker. Thank you for your support. It means a lot. Thank you. This is a great question. Any plans for an episode on Plaython? Yes, I do want to do an episode on Plaython. In fact, there is a whole bunch of Renaissance material that I'm going to start rolling out at some point in the future. And I know that it's not popular for whatever reason. People don't like Renaissance occultism, but it is so much more intellectually interesting than Solomonic magic stuff to me. um, and so I'd far more rather focus on Plathon and Ficino's commentaries and Pico. So yeah, I really want to gear that up probably for next year and be focusing a lot more on Renaissance mysticism. So I know that content will always bomb in the algorithm, but I kind of don't care because it's just far more intellectually interesting than another spell for summoning a demon to get a girlfriend. That's stuff is vexing, intellectually vexing. But yep, I do want to do that. That's a great idea. Frater RC, hey brother, I'm looking forward to visiting with you and hanging out in the next couple of weeks. Have I ever tried Grand Absinthe from France? Yes, I have tried it, and unfortunately, it is not absinthe, which is sort of punned in the name, absinthe, like absinthe, but it is not absinthe. Unfortunately, it is glorified pastis. So it is not. It is both not good and it is not absinthe. So not good. In fact, speaking of absinthe, actually, I was just checking out the garden back behind my house, where I have some wormwood growing, and it is really coming in right now. So I'm looking forward to being able to make some absinthe, doing some absinthe with literally locally grown in my backyard wormwood. It's an interesting question. How am I doing mental health and all? I'm very lucky in that my mental health is quite good. I know that the world is a dumpster fire shitstorm right now with everything going on, and the world's just a mess. But for whatever reason, I'm very lucky in that I don't suffer from anxiety and depression. I don't really have those. I don't know how I don't have them. I probably should. Everyone else I know has them. But I'm very lucky in that as long as I have things to do, I do quite well. I think when I don't have things to do and when I have like long periods of unstructured time, I kind of go crazy. But when I have things to do, like I always do, I do quite well. So I'm quite lucky to be that way. But thank you for asking. I do think that we should check in on each other because the world is a mess right now. And I think that people who are feeling anxious and depressed are feeling extremely reasonable things. Like I think I'm actually unreasonable in that for whatever reason, I'm not really, it doesn't seem to have take an emotional toll on me. Also, when the last election happened, I also just took a basic break on reading the news. So I more or less I read the news once a week, and I listen to public radio when I take my kids to school. But otherwise, than that, no. In fact, I took all the news apps off my phone. I blocked all of the major news outlets, CNN, BBC, and whatever. I blocked them, so I just don't. They're not even there. I just don't even look at them. So I took them off just because I don't see, for my own mental health, I don't see there being any relationship positively to constantly following the news cycle and actually living a life worth living. And so I just got rid of it. And if that makes me a not responsible member of the human race, then I just would reject that characterization. I think that insofar as I am plugged into what I can change about the world, I monitor it. But insofar as the 24-hour news cycle of breaking news, that's just meant to like mess your head up so that some people over at Fox News and MSNBC and Democracy Now, it's just for them to make money. So you being addicted to the news cycle, which depresses you, only enriches the shareholders of those companies and it destroys people's mental health. And I found myself like checking it more frequently than I wanted to, and so I just dipped. So same with Instagram. Folks know we have an Instagram for the rare book business, and I had Instagram on my phone for the first time just because it's cool to like see pictures of my friends and their cool old books. But I found myself scrolling it for like half an hour one morning, and then I like sort of realized that I'd laid in bed for a half an hour just scrolling reels and crap, and immediately deleted the app. I was like, I am not smarter than the panel of psychologists they hire to make me addicted to that. I'm just not smarter than my limbic system is not smarter than them. They are like experts at addiction and getting you addicted. And I felt that, and I was like, "Alf." And so, like, I have Instagram, like I can log into it here, and I can manage whatever I do here. But like on the phone, absolutely not. It's just like I am not smarter than the people that are there to like make money on me being addicted to it. So, but anyway, I would encourage folks. I think this is a great question. I think that we should not. We should, this is Men's Mental Health Month, right? Was last month, this month, whatever. It's Men's Mental Health Month. I think that we should just always check in with each other. If you have good friends, you know, checking in about folks' mental health is a good idea. So I appreciate it. It's not too parasocial, and I appreciate the question. AI for deep research on mystical texts? Sure. Why not? I'm not a technophobe when it comes to AI. I think that it will be abused. I think it is being abused. I think AI is going to really do damage to YouTube. No, I think that there's been all kinds of cool stuff already emerging with AI and ancient texts. They've used AI to call out a whole bunch of stuff from some cuneiform documents. We discovered some new sections from the Epic of Gilgamesh. So yeah, I'm all about the use of AI in responsible ways, just like any technology. I'm not using it just because I don't really feel the need to. But if someone were out there doing it, more power to them. I think that when it comes to AI and machine learning and LLMs and all of it, it's just a question of, is it appropriate and is it being used responsibly? And that's just true of any technology. And I think that AI is not different than that. So I'm not a tech phobe when it comes to AI. Now, will we be using it responsibly? Of course not. We're human beings. The moment we could sharpen metal, we started killing each other with it. So yeah, will it be used responsibly? No, but can it be? Probably. And I think there will be people out there that are using it in cool and responsible ways. Would I ever do a collaboration with Flint Dibble? Maybe that'd be kind of cool. Yeah, I'd love to. If folks know him or follow his channel or his Patreon, feel free to let him know. I'd love to have him on, and we could talk about pseudo history and pseudo archaeology. There's a lot of that in my field. But yeah, it'd be great to have him on. I really appreciated him on Joe Rogan. I think it's one of the only episodes of Joe Rogan I've ever listened to. So I did appreciate his work on Rogan and just him in general. I appreciate the work he does. So yeah, folks know Flint. Feel free to let him know I'm a fan, and if he ever wants to come on the show, it's a standing invitation. Looking forward to getting the beautiful bowl you made. Oh, wonderful! I'm glad you ordered one. Thank you for being sane and keep fighting the good fight. I appreciate that. I appreciate also your great icon on your thing with the Camel cigarettes. Yeah, I appreciate it. I try to do this material and esotericism in a way that's sane, that's down to earth, that's grounded in data and evidence. That's not, just me just saying a bunch of stuff. So yeah, I really appreciate that, and I appreciate the super thanks. What do the Solomonic columns symbolize, and why did Constantine bring them to St. Peter's as well as Bernini choosing them for his bronze altar? This is a great question. I don't know the answer to this. You mean the twisty kind of columns that you see? You actually see them in some early printings of things like Sefer Yetzirah, Sefer Zohar, lots of Jewish books from the 16th century. I don't know. This is a great question, for someone who's an expert in maybe Freemasonry. I'm sure has an answer to this, but I don't know. I don't know the significance of the twisty columns. I'm certain that they did not exist in the actual Solomonic temple that existed way back in Judean times, Israelite times. I mean, they could have carved that. In fact, I think we just have a couple of objects from the Temple of Solomon, but I don't know exactly what they symbolize. I don't think that Constantine brought them back to St. Peter's. That seems very unlikely to me, historically speaking. But that'd be interesting. Yeah. All right. Sorry, folks, need to get these super chats before. HR, thank you for the super sticker. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Thank you. All right. How did Lazzarelli influence Agrippa? I would say that Agrippa's understanding of Hermeticism is from Lazzarelli. So, and I say that what you should do is read Wouter Hanegraaff's article called "Better Than Magic," where Wouter Hanegraaff lays out how directly Agrippa influences, or rather, how Lazzarelli influences Agrippa. But the short answer is, Hermeticism and Agrippa's concept of magic is derivative directly of Lazzarelli's concept of magic. So, and it has to do with the fact that it's not magic; it's kind of a theurgy. And so, but yeah, if you want to get really into that, then Wouter Hanegraaff has an excellent article about it. Ever going to go into Anne Conway again? Probably not. I think I've said my piece about Lady Anne Conway. She just has the one mystical text, fascinating text. Though I was glad to be able to cover it, but I don't know of any other books specifically about her. I think the ones I listed were the ones that I consulted, but I'd be interesting. Yeah, be interesting to see if there's anything else. But there might have been more stuff written since then, but I don't know. I would like to cover women mystics and headaches. There's a whole interesting business about headaches and mysticism, whether it's Simone Weil or Hildegard or Lady Anne Conway. Lady Anne Conway is almost trepanated to deal with her headaches, so that'd be a cool topic: is headaches and mysticism, or migraines and mysticism. So that'd be a cool topic. You briefly mentioned John Dee and Edward Kelly being involved in some kind of non-monogamous relationship. Well, it wasn't a non-monogamous relationship. The angels told Dee and Kelly to swap their wives for a night, and they did, from what we can tell. In fact, the angel diaries say pactum factum. The deal was done, and that was it. That was basically the extent of it, and they broke off the whole spirit communications almost immediately after that. Sometimes I think that Edward Kelly was just trying to bluff Dee. He was just like, maybe I'll tell Dee to do the craziest thing I can, and maybe he won't do it, and that'll be the end of it. And I think Dee called his bluff. But that was it. Relationship is a strong term, because Jane Dee certainly did not want to do it. One of the most heartbreaking moments in the entire Spirit Diaries is just like Jane Dee sobbing at the idea. She hated Edward Kelly, and such an amazing woman. Jane Dee is an amazing woman. Deborah Harkness has an excellent article about Jane Dee that I may do an episode about. But she had really disliked Edward Kelly. So, but yeah, I think a very tragic and sorry, sad end to the Enochian adventures of Dee and Kelly. I know I'm skipping down a lot, folks. I only have about 20 minutes left. Any thoughts on links between late antique theurgical practices of animal sacrifice and the pre-Nicene Christian Eucharist? Any papers or research out there? I think that what's interesting about the Eucharist as a ingesting of the body of Christ is that there was a tendency, and I have to look up where I read this exactly. There was an intellectual tendency in the late classical world to move away from animal sacrifices in general. It's Porphyry, right? This is a big divide in Neoplatonism between Porphyry and Iamblichus. Whereas Iamblichus wants to keep animal sacrifices, Porphyry wants to go away from them. And also, Philo's understanding the sacrifices is very intellectual and is not that interested in physical animal sacrifices. He's not that interested in the temple in general. I think what's interesting about Christianity is they have it both ways. They maintain all the theurgy of Porphyrian, and again, this is being a little anachronistic, but they maintain the uh, the elimination of animal sacrifice, because obviously Jesus is the sacrifice to end all sacrifices, but also they maintain the animal sacrifice and sacrifice of Jesus, but also the ingestion of the sacrifice in the form of the Eucharist. So it's part of the great genius of Christianity to sort of anticipate this debate and to already solve for it. It's one of the many things I admire about Catholicism. I think it's this early Catholics. I just love early Catholicism, intellectually speaking. But that would be my guess, and I could try to find this essay that I read about the intellectualization of sacrifices, and I think that Christianity fits within that. And I say intellectualization, I mean sort of the moving away from literally doing it to a kind of spiritual practice of animal sacrifice. But if you email me, I'll try to find that paper. But I should also notice, right? My all my books are packed up, so I might not be able to find it. Wow, folks, it's a lot of folks here. It's almost 600 people watching. Wow, it's great. Um, did check the Biceps Isles album. I rec in the EG live stream. I'll check it out. I'm always looking for new music. So I'll check it out. Thank you. Biceps Isles. All right. Let me make sure. Okay. Hail Nero, Hail Esoterica, and Hail Critical Scholarship. I agree with two of those three. I'm not a big fan of Nero. Um, but yeah, thanks. Thank you, HR. Thoughts on New Age spiritual movements? Any pitfalls you see, considering your vast knowledge of the history? I have to say this. I really hate to say this when you donated money. I don't know anything about New Age spiritual movements. My knowledge about esotericism is almost exclusively pre 1750 or so, and so outside of Walter Hanegraaff's book on New Age spirituality, which I read ages ago, and I frankly don't even remember most about it. I read it very early on. I need to reread it, but I don't know anything about New Age spiritual movements. Um, I do. I have had experience. Well, I have had almost overwhelmingly negative experience when I've talked to people or interacted with people from the wellness world. Um, uh, Almost all, like the world of like spiritual coaches, the wellness people, um, sort of new agey versions of that stuff. I've almost always gotten really, I won't say bad vibes. I've just seen people say intellectually toxic stuff. Um, and so, in general, people who I've seen connected to that world, I typically avoid. And when I, hear about, people raising vibrations and stuff, I'm like, ooh. Um, just because I've seen that, just, I don't know. I've seen that stuff descend into culty behavior really quick, and I just don't want to have anything to do with that at all. So I can say that I've had experiences with some of people adjacent to that movement that have been pretty negative. But in terms of intellectually understanding it or having an academic understanding of it, I can't say that I have much of one. So my personal experience is just my personal experience, and you can take it for what it's worth. But I haven't dived into much in terms of the academic study of New Age spiritual movements. So my apologies there. Any plan to talk about African mysticism, anything from voodoo to the beliefs of the Dogon tribe? I would love to do something on voodoo and hoodoo for two reasons. One, I have a deep connection to New Orleans. My brother lives there, and I've spent a lot of time there. So I'd love to do something on that, and also the world of hoodoo and root work is something I'm also really interested in as a Mississippian and coming from Mississippi. You would hear people talk. You hear people call people haints. All right, she's such a haint. And it's the kind of thing that I grew up as a kind of, my mom's from the Mississippi Delta. And so it's the kind of thing that you heard in the background, especially from African American folks, of course. but I don't know much. I don't know much about it, and it's a real gap in my knowledge that I'm a bit embarrassed of, to be honest. Just because you do all this work to learn about ancient cultures that are far away from you, but you don't do the work. Speaking for me, that I don't do the work to learn the culture I come from. And so in some sense, it's embarrassing that I don't know more about it. So I think this is a great question, and I think it's a great inspiration for me to do more more stuff specifically on voodoo and hoodoo root work and stuff like that, specifically in the context of New Orleans and African American spirituality and magic and mysticism in the American South, which is a world that I feel um, I have a lot of admiration for. So yeah, it's a great question. Great question. A great question and a great encouragement. Do I see any connective tissue between Jewish descent, mysticism, and the later Christian concepts of hell? Um, Not so much there, because hell had already been basically invented. Gehenna as a negative afterlife was already sort of in the weeds in the apocalyptic period. That was already an idea that was very much around. Um, and it's interesting because you don't see much talk, although there is some talk of Gehenna the um, in the Merkava literature, but I don't think it's connected to. It doesn't do much in terms of the later concepts of hell. And this also has to do with when the Merkava literature is being produced, because obviously Christians already had that idea pretty early, and the Merkava literature, depending on who you ask, is really a god. It's really a Amoraic, maybe Taanitic, and that's already well after early Christianity, right? Or a couple hundred years later, at least. But I think it's a great question, and maybe I'll flag Gehenna stuff when I'm reading and working through material for the Merkava stuff. Who is the most metal gods? I think any god who dies and comes back to life is pretty metal. I mean, so like Baal, Jesus, Osiris, Inanna is pretty metal. And the hunger on a meat hook, her flesh on a meat hook in the underworld. It's like, what can be more like Inanna? Oh yeah, can't forget. What's her name? Anat. Anat is the most metal of all the gods. She's the most badass god of all. I think I think one time in the Baal cycle, she's referred to as Anat who delights in gore. She wears a necklace, like of hands, of course. Equivalent deities, of course, and Kali and the Hindu tradition. But people always think of like dudes as being the most metal gods, and I think of Thor as sort of a it doesn't strike me as terribly metal. I think my favorite story about Thor is where he has to like dress up in a dress and marry one of the Jotunar, the giants. I think Jackson Crawford translates it as anti-gods. And I love that sort of queer version of Thor, because it upsets this very sort of fascistic one of Thor. We get this other, and I think it's all because Loki tricks him or whatever. Of course. I guess Odin. I mean, Odin also, I don't think of as very metal. I think he's just like a shuck. He's like a shyster god. I mean, people are always like, "Yeah, I want to go to Valhalla," and I'm like the whole point of that god Odin is to use his wisdom to trick dudes into getting themselves killed to serve him in Ragnarok in a battle he knows he's going to lose. Like Ragnarok is a scam. It's like an eschatological scam led by like the pyramid schemer that is Odin. So I think that would I don't want anything to do with Odin. But I would say Anat. Anat is probably the most metal god that I know of. She's pretty badass. If you're familiar with Peshat, how does Isaiah 43 read? I do have no idea what Isaiah 43 says. Did any Gnostics seem aware of Peshat, or did they only know the Septuagint reading? To my knowledge, the Gnostic texts don't know the Hebrew Bible in Hebrew. They know it in Greek. But I don't know what is that. Let me look at it real fast just so I can see it. I can be wary of the time. I wish I could program my browser to anytime I put in a biblical reference to automatically include the word Safaria at the end. That'd be so great. Yeah, I guess I'm not I'm not sure what your question is, but I don't see anything in that verse that strikes me as particularly strange. But I don't know if the Septuagint has a different reading. But at least from reading it in the Hebrew, it seems like a relatively straightforward. Unless I'm missing something, let me know. But thank you for the super chat. Have you ever checked out your birth chart? I have never checked out my birth chart, although I've had lots of people ask me for details to make me a birth chart. I've had lots of people ask me about when I was born and where and what latitude and all this stuff. But no, I've never actually looked at my birth chart. So yeah, I don't know if there are any special insights that are to be gleaned from it. So maybe I should team up with Chris Brennan and get someone he recommends to do it, because obviously he's going to be the guy that would really know the people that do it right. So maybe I will email Chris and get a real pro to do it. But no, I've never checked out my birth chart. I don't have a lot of interest in astrology that isn't just basically knowing astrology well enough to be able to understand what's happening in alchemical manuals and magical books and stuff like that. But I've never done that before. Yeah, have I ever heard about the Book of Jacob? Yep, I have. This book about Jacob Frank. Thank you for the super chat. I have it. It's huge. It's a massive book. I want to read it. I just have no time for reading fiction. But I've heard nothing but good things about it. It won a bunch of prizes. It's supposed to be good. I mean, I think I've said this before. I have a deep hatred of Jacob Frank. He makes my skin crawl. He's like one of the historical. He's one of one of the historical characters that if I just met him, I would just punch him in the face until someone pulled me off him. I just really dislike him. But I've not read the book. But Frank makes my skin crawl, and yeah, I need to read it. It's supposed to be really good. But I would love to. If I read it, I'll let you know. So. Yeah, Joshua, thank you. Yeah, am I planning to do some other ones? Maybe, yeah, I'll do one. I want to do one on Leviathan. I'd love to do one on. I don't know if I'd do one on John the Baptizer because we just know so little about him. It'd be so speculative. But yeah, do one on Anat, especially Anat Yahu. Sort of in the Elephant Island, it was clear that the folks down there, the Judeans that live down there, were worshiping Anat and Yahweh together. Anat's also one of the gods that become sort of assimilated into the Egyptian mythology. So yeah, those are all great ones to do with to do these character profiles. That's a great idea. Felix. So most esoteric traditions state some singular entity from which everything stems. Other traditions that state multiple genesis points. Not really. I think that, at least not that I know of, almost all of them really love the idea that everything goes back to one. People just love we love the idea that there's some kind of primal simplicity. And so people really love the idea that there's just a primary one that everything goes back to. And even this impulse still haunts us in physics, right? We're still trying to find the fundamental forces that unify everything into one grand unified theory. Supersymmetry and all these mathematical things that drive physics, mathematical numerological philosophy, really aesthetics. But I don't know of one that posits sort of a fundamental ontological difference, and you can hear back behind me, the roaring voice of Joe Deleuze. But it would be cool to develop a mythology that is Deleuzian, and that it prioritizes difference pure difference, ontological difference over sameness, and difference over unity. So that would be a cool project to do. Is and there is some stuff written on that, the Hermetic Hegel or the Hermetic Deleuze. But I don't know of any actual historical mythology that does it. All right, folks, I'm sorry I'm missing a lot of questions. I know that I am, because I see them a lot in the chat. So I do want to apologize that I'm just getting the ones from the super chats, but I got to get those because I don't want anyone to throw money and not get their question answered. So my apologies. Yeah, the Milkman. It is Weakling shirt. I agree with you. I think it is. It was peak U.S. black metal. Weakling is just Dead as Dreams is just a record that I will never grow tired of. That record. Dead as Dreams is just, I think, one of the most impressive pieces of music I've heard in my life. It's just an incredible music. So, folks, if you're a fan of, if you're interested in black metal and you want a great band to listen to, Weakling's Dead as Dreams is just one of the best of all time, in my opinion. Thank you, Jane. Super sticker. I appreciate this. Thank you. No, another one. Wow. Thank you. I have a master in library science. How do I get into rare books? I'm struggling. This is a great question. I'm going to be doing an episode with another fellow book dealer / collector, and we'll talk about that. That's a great question to talk about, is getting into rare books. Now, I have to be careful. I don't really do much with rare books. I do a lot with antiquarian books, which are often rare, but in antiquarian books and rare books, those are not quite the same thing. A modern book can be rare. You print 8 copies of it. Well, it's quite rare, even though it's just printed yesterday. So I'm more in the world of antiquarian books, but typically antiquarian books are rare, and typically antiquarian occult books are indeed rare. But yeah, this is a thing that I'll cover in a future upcoming episode. I've also done an episode with Adam Weinberger and James Gray, where we've talked about, I've done interviews and conversations with them about getting into rare book collecting. So if you want to check out those are also good starting points as well. Yeah, let me check, Freder RC, about the 2 absents that get made over there for the Enokia Con. Yeah, I'll check them out and let you know which one I think would be better. But yeah, I'll let you know. Thank you for the super chat. Yeah, folks, if you don't know the Enokia Con, I'll be there in a few weeks from now. We'll be doing all things Enochian, Enoch, John D, all that. So absolutely, if you want to come hang out with us, you should do it. And Fred RC, you want to put the link in the chat? Feel free to do it. Feel free. Highly encouraged. Yes. Am I a fan of Foucault's Pendulum? Of course, you have to be a fan of Umberto Eco if you're in this field. I love Foucault's Pendulum because I love the idea that it basically makes fun of me and people like me. It's basically a giant joke on in the field. So I love the fact that folks get to be the butt of that joke. So yeah, I've definitely read Foucault's Pendulum. It's a great book. I don't have a lot more to say about it aside from it's good. I have to also say that I don't read a lot of Umberto Eco anymore because it just feels like work. If I'm trying to translate Latin jokes, I'm like, this is just work. I'm supposed to be reading for fun, not reading for some meta level joke in Latin or something. So I don't read a lot of Umberto Eco anymore. Are Agrippa and Solomonic talismans different? Insofar as Solomonic talismans are derivative of the talismans that are coming from, oh my goodness, his name's gonna Thabit ibn Qurra. They all come from Thabit, basically in the Western tradition. They're downstream of Thabit. So insofar as that they are downstream of Thabit, they are not fundamentally metaphysically different. Although Solomonic talismans would be used for very different ends than Agrippan talismans. So, yeah, but they're under the hood, they're similar, but in the ends and the doing and the reasoning, they're quite different. Oh, folks, there's so many great questions. I really want to say that that I apologize for not being able to get to more of these questions. If you guys think I should be doing more live streams, please let me know. Let me know in the chat. I may throw it up as a thing. I may start doing maybe live streams every 2 weeks. When the channel gets to 1 million, or maybe even the beginning of next year, I'm going to be changing things up a little bit. Not fundamentally, but a little bit. But if folks are more interested in and more live streams, let me know, because I'm happy, to think about that. Think about that. Carrie, this might be known information to most. Out of curiosity, did you listen to black metal? Yes. That is why I have black metal design shirts. Yes, exactly. Because this is what I wear. Like, I have 2 modes. I have like extra and peaky blinders, which is sort of my formal teaching get up, and then I have black metal shirts. And so, yeah, that's why I basically designed the merch, because I, wanted to design merch that I would actually wear. And so that's why, and also they're like jokes, right? They're like metal band names that have emerged from videos. So they're also kind of a visual joke, because I like, nothing should be terribly serious. And so this is why I also like Tool. Tool's like either jokes about, it's like either dick jokes and mysticism. And it should be always both. It should never be just mysticism. It should also be the most juvenile kind of humor too. So that's why, we have shirts like Necromantic Underground on the thing. Have I ever thought about doing a video on Nazi mysticism? Not really, because it's 20th century. Not that it's not interesting, of course. Of course, well, the SS guys are up to all kinds of weird, interesting stuff, aside from mass murder, of course. But sure, Himmler and the SS Ahnenerbe and all that, that's all super fascinating stuff. It's just not the purview of the channel, because it's 20th century. I don't really cover 20th century stuff. I don't mind covering stuff from the National Socialists, but it's not so much that it's National Socialist stuff. It's just that it's 20th century stuff, and I don't cover that. Great book on the called The Black Sun that covers that material. Check out the band Gnostician as well. Okay, Gnostician. It's a great band name. All right, folks. I just got to get the rest of the super chats, and I'm going to have to sign off. Any thought of doing a video between Hinduism and Gnosticism? No, because I don't know enough about Hinduism. I'm not an expert in Hinduism, so it will be. Also, I don't like religious comparativa. I'm not a comparativist. In fact, I'm a structuralist when it comes to thinking about religion, and so I don't like religious comparisons, or things that I think are nearly always fallacious. So I would not do an episode like that for structural reasons, methodological reasons, and I'd also not do one for reasons that I don't have enough knowledge about Hinduism to do one that would do Hinduism, of course, any justice. Not that Hinduism is one thing, it's a giant religious group of religions of the Indian subcontinent. Hey, Mike, thank you, brother. I appreciate the beer. Hope you're not working too hard. No, you're out there. You're in the New York area, so I know you guys are getting a lot of heat. So, as a guy who used to work construction in Mississippi in the summer, I know that sucks. And take care of yourself. Stay hydrated. I appreciate the work you do. All working class people do. You guys make the world turn around. I appreciate your support. The Nero thing is the 666 thing. Of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's the 666 is Nero, and the 616 is also Nero, but in Hebrew gematria, not Greek. Did I mention gematria in the Pedicyrus episode? I don't think I did. Email me. I'll take a look. I don't think I mentioned it. I don't think I mentioned gematria in it. But yeah, I hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing well, brother. Good to see you. Thoughts on cannabis at Tellerrad? I think that it was probably part of the incense. We have a couple of instances of people ingesting cannabis, archaeological instances of it. There's a young girl that had it in her body as well, probably for medicinal reasons, but I suspect it was just part of the incense that was being offered in the Telerad shrine. Um, did it have a psychotropic effect? I don't know. Maybe it would have to be a lot of it or a closed in room, but I don't. I don't think they were hotboxing in the Holy of Holies. They should have been, but I don't think they were. Um, I don't use marijuana myself because every time I've ever used it of any variety, I just immediately think I'm dying. Taking huge doses of LSD, 500 mix of LSD, total ego death, the whole thing, and that's fine. But the moment I ingest a gummy, I'm like, okay, I'm dying. Like my heart's stopping, and my breathing is gonna fail. And then everyone's like, oh, try this one, and I tried that one, and also, oh, I'm gonna die. So clearly, Yahweh likes the smell of cannabis, at least at Telerad, but not for me. Opinion on Jesus saying both anyone who doesn't return to enter the sheep pen by the gate is a thief, and behold, I'm coming like a thief for his return. I don't have any specific thoughts on that. Yeah, I don't have any specific thoughts on that. I had to find out where he says the I'm coming like a thief in the night. But yeah, it could just be a case where Jesus was mixing his metaphors, as we always do. We all do at some point. All right, folks, I'm coming down. Avoid the cedar forest. Yes, Enkidu, you're right. But they didn't. And one of the cool things they recovered from the new Gilgamesh tablets was the going to the cedar forest, and there's like monkeys and stuff. It's so cool. Decent places for a poor person to learn Hebrew under a structured and progressive format. I would check out. I think Dan McClellan has a class that's relatively inexpensive. Check out Dan McClellan's class or Digital Hammurabi. They also have a biblical Hebrew class that I don't think is very expensive. So check out Digital Hammurabi and Dan McClellan. I think they both offer classes. Kip Davis may also offer Hebrew classes, but I'm not sure. But check those out. Almost got roped into teaching Hebrew one time, and I'm glad I dodged that. I do not want to teach Hebrew. Thoughts on making content on how Western esotericism traveled to Latin America. I don't understand Spanish, and so I couldn't really do that because I don't really have Spanish. And yeah, I just don't know enough about Kardec and stuff like that. A lot of that's 20th century stuff. I think I will do something on the Inquisition in the Americas. So I'll probably do that about how the Inquisition operated in the Americas, specifically also an episode on exorcism in the New World. But I probably won't do one. I'm not skilled enough to do much outside of that. All right, folks. Well, I'm gonna have to call it. There's just so many great questions in the chat that I'm missing. I see them and I'm like, sucks. I only have an hour and a half. But let me say, I would love to do more live streams. Where I can take more questions, and I do these every 3 weeks, and so maybe that's not frequently enough. So yeah, maybe we can plan on do some more live streams. But aside from that, folks, I got to get going. I actually have an appointment at 3:00 that I have to get to. But again, let me say thanks to everyone who watches. Thanks for all the support. Big news coming tomorrow, so watch out for some big news on the channel coming tomorrow. But yeah, I really appreciate everybody, and I really appreciate the support for the channel, and just love hanging out with you guys. It's one of the best things about the whole Esoterica business is being able to hang out with folks, get to know all you guys, and getting to hang out. So I appreciate it, and I'll see folks for the next live stream and next week for new content. So y'all take care. Take it easy. Bye.